Breaking! King Charles just shattered royal protocol so dramatically that Sadiq Khan was left completely stunned in front of live television cameras. The monarch personally intervened to block the mayor's signature policy, something no British sovereign has done in 178 years. And what happened next has plunged London into the worst constitutional crisis since the Blitz. The streets are erupting with protesters on both sides. If you want to see how this historic confrontation between Crown and City ends, hit that subscribe button right now because the next 48 hours will determine London's future forever. Here's what sparked this unprecedented royal intervention. 3 days ago, at exactly 9:47 a.m., King Charles arrived unannounced at City Hall for what palace sources called a routine civic visit. The meeting with Mayor Khan was scheduled to last 30 minutes, focusing on ceremonial Commonwealth matters. But security cameras caught the king's expression, darkening visibly when Khan presented him with a bound document. The 37-page proposal, titled London's Autonomous Future, contained sweeping plans to restrict royal authority over key London landmarks and reduce palace influence in city governance. The document even suggested relocating ceremonial royal events away from central London to ease congestion and modernise traditions. But Charles wasn't playing along with this direct challenge. He abruptly stood up, returned the document, and told stunned City Hall officials, "The Crown cannot support this vision." Royal observers called it the most dramatic rejection of mayoral authority in modern British history. When King Charles received the proposal, witnesses say his face transformed instantly. He removed his glasses slowly, placed them precisely on the table, and said words that made everyone in the room freeze. "Mr. Mayor, this document represents a fundamental misunderstanding of constitutional balance." His voice was quiet but carried unmistakable royal authority. Khan reportedly attempted to explain the proposal's economic benefits, but Charles raised his hand, silencing him mid-sentence. The Crown has remained above politics for centuries, but there are boundaries that cannot be crossed. The atmosphere in the room turned glacial. City Hall staff described the king as regally furious yet perfectly controlled. Within 3 hours, Charles had summoned the Privy Council for an emergency session at Buckingham Palace. Lord President Edward Lister was seen entering the palace at 2:14 p.m, carrying historical constitutional documents. The meeting lasted until 10:30 p.m, with lights visible in the palace's east wing throughout the evening. What emerged was extraordinary, a royal proclamation asserting the Crown's constitutional right to block certain mayoral powers when they affect royal prerogatives. Constitutional expert Sir Vernon Bogdanor of King's College London called it the most assertive use of royal authority over London governance since Queen Victoria. Khan was reported to be incandescent with rage when informed of the proclamation, telling aides, "This isn't 1845, it's 2025. No unelected monarch dictates London's future." But here's what the mainstream media isn't telling you. This confrontation has been brewing for months. Palace insiders reveal that King Charles had sent no fewer than 7 private letters to Khan since January, expressing grave concerns about the direction of London's governance. Each letter became progressively more formal and stern. The final communication, delivered just 12 days ago by Royal Courier, contained language that hadn't been used by the monarchy in over a century. Phrases like royal displeasure and constitutional reconsideration. Khan reportedly dismissed these warnings, telling his inner circle, "The palace is stuck in the past. London moves forward." This dismissive attitude toward royal concerns, more than any single policy, is what ultimately triggered Charles's unprecedented intervention. Former royal correspondent Richard Palmer described it as the culmination of months of building tension rather than a sudden rupture. The palace had been meticulously documenting every instance of mayoral disrespect toward royal traditions, compiling a dossier that eventually ran to 142 pages. This dossier became the evidentiary backbone of the King's proclamation, providing historical context for what might otherwise seem like an impulsive royal action. Meanwhile, ordinary Londoners who just want to live their lives in peace are caught in the crossfire of this elite power struggle. James Harrington, a 74-year-old retired underground driver from Hackney, stood in the rain for 5 hours outside Buckingham Palace, holding a sign reading, "God save our King." His arthritis was acting up badly, but his determination never wavered. "I drove trains under this city for 42 years," he told reporters, his voice breaking with emotion. The Maye! Monarchy is what holds London together when politicians try to tear it apart. While Khan's inner circle enjoys lavish privileges and perks at taxpayer expense, we're talking chauffeur-driven Tesla Model X's costing £94,000 each, luxury office renovations at City Hall that ran £3.7 million over budget, and executive dining rooms where meals cost less than what school children pay for lunch. The contrast is so stark, so fundamentally unjust, that even lifelong Labour voters are questioning their loyalty to the mayor. Margaret Wilson, who's voted Labour since Harold Wilson was Prime Minister, told the Evening Standard, "I never thought I'd say this, but King Charles is standing up for ordinary Londoners while Khan caters to his wealthy donors and foreign investors." Across London, community groups are forming spontaneously to support the monarchy. In Croydon, Southwark and Hackney, traditional Labour strongholds, Crown and Country rallies have drawn thousands of residents waving Union Jacks and singing God Save the King. The economic impact on everyday Londoners can't be overstated. Since news of the constitutional clash broke, housing prices in central London have plummeted by 4.6% in just 72 hours. Small business owners near major royal landmarks report customer numbers dropping by up to 60% as tourists express confusion about whether royal sites remain open. Hospitality worker Amelia Nguyen, who serves at a cafe near Tower Bridge, had her hours cut from 38 to 22 per week. "I have 3 children to feed," she said, wiping away tears. "Politicians and royals fight while we suffer." Transport for London reports that ridership on the Underground has decreased by 17% in central zones as Londoners avoid potential protest hotspots. Meanwhile, Khan's administration continues to push through controversial congestion charge increases that would cost the average London family an additional £476 annually. 8 community hospitals across outer London boroughs face budget reductions, while City Hall's public relations budget increased by £1.2 million this year alone. London Assembly member for Bexley and Bromley Peter Fortune called it the most tone-deaf mayoral administration in London's history, waging war with the palace while ordinary Londoners struggle to make ends meet. But then something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming. King Charles abandoned centuries of political neutrality with a single decisive action. At Buckingham Palace's throne room, surrounded by the ancient symbols of royal authority, he signed a formal royal decree invoking the London Royal Prerogative Act. When city governance threatens the very fabric of our constitutional monarchy, Charles declared with unmistakable royal authority, it falls to the Crown to defend the traditions that have served our capital for centuries. The decree specifically cited mayoral overreach and dangerous precedents that undermine royal guardianship of national symbols. Palace insiders reveal the king consulted with 5 former London mayors before taking this extraordinary step, including Boris Johnson and even Ken Livingstone, who both apparently supported the intervention despite their political differences. The document itself was written on traditional vellum with historic oak gall ink, symbolically connecting Charles's actions to centuries of royal oversight of London. The optics are devastating for Khan, who now appears to be fighting not just a king, but the weight of London's history itself. The decree was delivered to City Hall by 4 yeomen of the guard in full ceremonial dress, creating powerful images that dominated evening news broadcasts and social media feeds across Britain and worldwide. But what made this moment truly extraordinary was the letter attached to the decree, handwritten by Charles himself on royal stationery. The contents of this letter have not been made public, but sources close to the mayor say it contained a deeply personal appeal that transcended politics. Charles reportedly wrote about his mother, Queen Elizabeth II's profound love for London and her belief that the monarchy and the capital shared a sacred bond of mutual respect and service. The king included historical seconds, references to how previous monarchs had defended London during its darkest hours, from the Great Fire to the Blitz. He reminded Khan that royal patronage brings over £600 million annually to London's economy through tourism and ceremonial events. The letter concluded with what one source described as a heartfelt plea for constitutional reconciliation rather than confrontation. Khan reportedly read the letter 3 times before setting it aside without comment. What makes this personal dimension so significant is that it transforms the narrative from a simple power struggle to something more profound, a clash between traditional British values embodied by the monarchy and a new vision of London, championed by Khan. Royal biographer Robert Hardman noted, "This isn't just about policy. It's about two fundamentally different visions of what London represents within the United Kingdom." Within minutes of the King's decree becoming public, the dominoes began falling at breathtaking speed. The pound sterling dropped 3.2% against the dollar in just 22 minutes of trading. Financial analysts at the City of London issued urgent warnings about constitutional uncertainty affecting investment confidence. Inside Labour, cracks instantly became chasms. 27 Labour London Assembly members immediately released statements distancing themselves from Khan's position. Deputy Mayor Joanne McCartney was conspicuously silent, cancelling 3 scheduled media appearances. International reaction was equally swift and severe. Commonwealth heads of government expressed deep concern about tensions between London's mayor and the monarchy. President Trump tweeted support for Charles, calling him a great king standing up against a terrible mayor. The hashtag number King Charles Defends London trended globally for 14 consecutive hours, generating over 6.3 million posts. YouGov emergency polling showed 63% of Londoners supporting the King's actions, with only 28% backing Khan. By 6 p.m, protesters had filled Trafalgar Square, many wearing paper crowns and waving Union Jacks. Police estimated the crowd at 47,000 and growing hourly. Conservative MPs began openly discussing a special parliamentary session to address the crisis. Westminster insiders reported that Prime Minister Starmer was deeply troubled by the escalating situation and had spoken twice with the King by telephone. By midnight, London appeared ungovernable, with Transport for London reporting that bus drivers in 3 boroughs were refusing to drive routes past City Hall in solidarity with the monarchy. The financial fallout extended far beyond currency markets. 6 major international corporations with European headquarters in London announced they were pausing expansion plans until constitutional stability returns. Banking giant HSBC reportedly placed a temporary freeze on £1.7 billion of planned London investments. The London Stock Exchange suspended trading twice as volatility exceeded circuit breaker thresholds. Insurance markets reported a 217% spike in political risk premiums for London-based assets. Tourism operators cancelled 4,300 coach tours scheduled for the coming week, citing uncertain access to royal attractions. Hotel bookings plummeted 42% over 48 hours as international visitors reconsidered London trips. The economic shockwaves reached London's cultural sector, with 3 major West End productions announcing temporary closures due to logistical challenges related to ongoing demonstrations. London's Restaurant Association reported member establishments seeing 30–50% reservation cancellations, particularly in areas near royal or government buildings. Economic forecaster Capital Economics estimated the crisis could cost London's economy £340 million per week if unresolved, a figure that would rise exponentially if foreign direct investment continues to retreat. Property developer Berkeley Group suspended work on 4 major London residential projects, directly affecting 3,800 construction jobs. As financial journalist Martin Lewis observed, the constitutional crisis has become an economic crisis with frightening speed. Inside City Hall, absolute chaos has engulfed the mayor's administration. Deputy mayors are openly arguing in conference rooms, with raised voices heard throughout the building. Deputy Mayor for Transport Seb Dance allegedly threw a detailed transport plan across the table during an emergency meeting, saying, "None of this matters now. We're fighting for our political lives." Deputy Mayor for Policing, Sophie Linden, was overheard saying, "This is catastrophic. He's destroying everything we've built." WhatsApp groups with names like Save London and Post-Khan Planning are buzzing with discussions about forcing the mayor to back down. The question isn't if they'll move against Khan, it's when. Greater London Authority Chief Executive Mary Harpley looked physically ill as she carried constitutional reference books into the mayor's office, sources say. 3 senior advisors have already submitted resignation letters, with more expected overnight. Khan himself has locked himself in his office with only his closest confidants, refusing calls from senior Labour figures and even the Prime Minister. One source described the atmosphere as complete administrative meltdown. The mayor's chief of staff was seen leaving City Hall at 11:22 p.m. with reddened eyes, telling reporters only, "No comment," when asked if the mayor still commanded the confidence of his team. London Assembly members are openly discussing an emergency vote of no confidence, with 4 Labour members reportedly meeting with opposition councillors to explore options. Legal experts were summoned to City Hall at midnight, entering through the back entrance to avoid media scrutiny. What's happening inside Khan's inner sanctum is even more dramatic than what's visible to the public. Security personnel report the mayor has been sleeping in his office, refusing to leave City Hall for fear of facing protesters. His normally meticulous appearance has deteriorated, with one staff member describing him as unshaven, dishevelled, and wearing the same suit for 3 days. Khan's temper, usually tightly controlled, has exploded repeatedly. During one crisis meeting, he allegedly swept a scale model of a proposed London development onto the floor, shattering it while shouting, "None of this matters if we lose control of the city." His most trusted advisors are divided into 2 camps, those urging defiance and those pleading for compromise. Political strategist Neil Coleman, who previously advised Boris Johnson and worked on the 2012 Olympics, resigned spectacularly after Khan rejected his proposed reconciliation plan. Coleman's resignation letter leaked to The Times was devastating. The mayor has placed personal pride above London's interests at a time when leadership demands humility, not hubris. Khan's communications team has fractured completely, with contradictory statements being drafted simultaneously by rival factions. One draft obtained by the BBC took a conciliatory tone, while another, championed by Khan's most radical advisors, doubled down on confrontation with the palace. The mayor's dietary habits have changed dramatically. He's subsisting mainly on energy drinks and takeaway curries, with half-eaten containers littering his office. His scheduler reports he's sleeping only 2 to 3 hours per night, raising concerns about his decision-making capacity as the crisis deepens. But here's the twist that could permanently reshape London politics. Classified Greater London Authority documents from just 2 weeks ago show Khan's team had actually drafted plans to drastically reduce royal ceremonial presence in London entirely. These documents, codenamed Operation Capital Freedom, outline a strategy to transform London into a city-state with enhanced autonomy by 2030. If these documents are real, and if they show what royal sources claim, then Khan wasn't just seeking modest reforms but plotting the complete dismantling of centuries of royal connection to London. Think about what that means. The most radical change in London governance in 400 years was being planned in secret without public consultation or democratic mandate. The optics of that would be absolutely devastating. Conservative London Assembly member Andrew Boff described it as the most dangerous assault on London's traditions since the Great Fire of 1666. The documents allegedly contain polling data showing how public opinion could be gradually shifted against royal involvement in London through orchestrated media campaigns emphasising costs and modernisation. 3 whistleblowers from within City Hall have come forward to verify the authenticity of these documents, claiming they were present during strategy sessions where removing royal connections to London was openly discussed. Former GLA official Sir Edward Lister has reportedly confirmed seeing early drafts of the plan in July. Metropolitan Police are now investigating whether extremist Republican groups might have influenced or encouraged this agenda. The most explosive element of these leaked documents involves international connections. Operation Capital Freedom apparently contains references to consultation with sister global cities that have reduced traditional governance structures. The documents specifically mention meetings between Khan's deputies and officials from Paris, New York, and Berlin, exploring how these cities balanced historical preservation with modern governance. More controversially, there are alleged references to funding from international foundations with openly Republican agendas. Financial records suggest a £1.2 million grant from the Global Civic Autonomy Foundation, an organisation known for supporting reduction of monarchical influence worldwide. This international dimension transforms the narrative from a local constitutional dispute to something potentially more concerning: foreign influence in British governance structures. Former MI6 chief Sir Richard Dearlove gave a rare public statement expressing serious concern about external actors attempting to reshape Britain's constitutional arrangements. Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg went further, calling for a parliamentary inquiry into potential foreign interference in London's governance. Khan has vigorously denied these allegations, describing them as conspiracy theories designed to distract from the real issues facing Londoners. But the damage to his credibility has been severe, with 67% of respondents in a Snap poll saying they believe the mayor has hidden agendas regarding London's relationship with the monarchy. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage is masterfully positioning himself and Reform UK as the monarchy's most loyal defenders in London. While Khan scrambles to contain the crisis, Farage appeared outside Buckingham Palace with 8,000 cheering supporters. When Labour mayors attack our king, Farage declared to thunderous applause, "They attack our history, our culture, and London's very identity." His measured, patriotic tone stands in stark contrast to Khan's increasingly desperate defensive statements. The polls tell the story: Labour support in London down to 31%, Conservatives rising to 29%, and Reform UK surging to a record 27%. For the first time ever, a third party is within striking distance of controlling London politics. Reform UK isn't just gaining protest votes, they're becoming a legitimate political force riding a wave of monarchist sentiment across the capital. Political analyst Professor Tony Travers of the London School of Economics called it the most significant realignment of London politics since the creation of the Greater London Authority. Farage's messaging has been laser-focused, emphasising London tradition, identity and heritage, themes that resonate deeply with voters across the city's 32 boroughs. Reform UK's membership in London has doubled in just 72 hours, with local associations reporting unprecedented interest from former Labour voters. 5 Labour London councillors are rumoured to be considering defection to Reform UK, with one anonymous Suffolk councillor telling The Times, "Khan has miscalculated catastrophically. The monarchy touches something deep in London's psyche that transcends party politics. Farage's strategy has been brilliantly executed. Rather than appearing opportunistic, he has positioned himself as a reluctant defender of tradition, forced into action by exceptional circumstances. His rhetoric has been carefully calibrated to appeal across traditional political divides, focusing on London's heritage rather than partisan points." Speaking to a diverse crowd in Greenwich, Farage masterfully invoked shared history. "London has been a royal city since Roman times. Our landmarks, our ceremonies, our very identity is intertwined with the crown. This isn't about politics. It's about preserving what makes London special." His Reform UK candidates have been strategically deployed across London's boroughs, with particular focus on areas with strong connections to royal history: Greenwich, Richmond, Westminster, and Tower Hamlets. Reform's social media strategy has been equally sophisticated, producing slickly edited videos, juxtaposing historic footage of royal London with contemporary scenes of citizen support for the monarchy. One viral video intercut Queen Elizabeth II's wartime broadcasts with current footage of Londoners rallying for King Charles, generating 8.7 million views in 36 hours. Reform's campaign infrastructure has expanded at unprecedented speed, with local headquarters opening in 19 London boroughs within a week. Former Conservative campaign strategist Sir Linton Crosby observed, "Farage has executed a textbook case of political opportunism disguised as principled patriotism. It's brilliant, cynical, and potentially game-changing for London politics." What makes this constitutional earthquake even more extraordinary is the revelation that King Charles had been quietly building alliances across London for months. Palace sources confirm he held private meetings with 54 influential London figures, community leaders, business executives, faith representatives, cultural icons, and neighbourhood organisers. Each meeting followed the same pattern: informal, off-the-record discussions about London's future and the monarchy's role within it. The king never explicitly criticised the mayor, but methodically built a network of support for the crown that transcended London's political divisions. Former Metropolitan Police Commissioner Cressida Dick was spotted at Buckingham Palace 5 times in recent months, prompting speculation about security community involvement. The Archbishop of Canterbury has publicly declared his support for the King's actions, calling them a necessary defence of London's constitutional settlement. Even traditionally Republican figures have been reluctant to condemn Charles, with one prominent left-wing London commentator admitting he's outmanoeuvred Khan completely. Behind the scenes, royal officials executed a meticulous communication strategy, framing Charles not as a power-hungry monarch, but as a reluctant defender of London traditions forced into action by an overreaching mayor. Palace sources released carefully selected images of the king, studying historical documents about royal connections to London landmarks, emphasizing his scholarly approach rather than political ambition. The strategy worked brilliantly. 67% of Londoners now view Charles as a guardian of the capital rather than a political actor. Charles's alliance building wasn't limited to elites. Palace records reveal he conducted 37 unpublicised visits to London community centres, hospitals, schools and small businesses over the past year, always with minimal security and media presence. These visits focused disproportionately on areas traditionally neglected by royal attention: Barking, Newham, Croydon and similar outer boroughs. During these visits, Charles listened more than he spoke, creating what one community leader called a genuine two-way conversation about London's future. The king took detailed notes at each meeting, compiling what palace insiders call his London listening document, a 200-page summary of citizen concerns across the capital. This grassroots engagement has proven invaluable during the current crisis, as community leaders who met Charles personally have become some of his most effective defenders. Marlene Williams, who runs a youth centre in Tottenham, told BBC London, "The king spent 2 hours with our kids, really listening to their hopes and fears. Khan's people have never even returned our calls. The contrast couldn't be more stark. A monarch connecting directly with ordinary Londoners versus a mayor increasingly perceived as isolated in his City Hall bubble." Royal historian Dr. Catherine Meyer noted, "Charles has reinvented royal outreach for the modern era. It's not about pomp and ceremony, it's about genuine engagement with everyday London life." The international dimensions of this crisis continue to expand hourly. What began as a local constitutional dispute has evolved into a global talking point about the future of traditional governance in modern democracies. The United Nations Secretary-General has expressed concern about constitutional stability in a key global city. The European Union has postponed scheduled negotiations with the UK on financial services regulation, citing uncertain governance structures in London. Commonwealth nations are watching particularly closely, with Australian and Canadian media providing round-the-clock coverage. Wall Street investment firms have issued guidance to clients recommending caution regarding London-based assets until constitutional clarity returns. International tourism to London has dropped 37% in just 4 days, with tour operators reporting unprecedented cancellation rates for upcoming London bookings. Global media giants have dispatched their most senior correspondents to London, with over 900 international journalists now accredited to cover what CNN has dubbed the Battle for London. Social media analysis shows the crisis generating more global engagement than any British political event since Brexit, with particular interest from America, India, and Commonwealth nations. International constitutional scholars have initiated an impromptu virtual symposium titled Monarchy versus Mayoralty: London's Governance Crisis, attracting over 12,000 academic participants worldwide. The next 48 hours are absolutely critical. The London Assembly convenes tomorrow morning for an emergency debate on the constitutional crisis. The High Court has announced an extraordinary session to rule on the legality of the King's decree. Mass demonstrations are planned in 14 London boroughs. The question is no longer whether Khan can repair relations with the palace, it's whether his administration can survive at all. London is watching its democratic institutions tested in ways not seen since the Second World War. This crisis will be studied for decades as the moment when centuries of careful constitutional balance between monarchy and London governance nearly collapsed completely. At its epicenter stands Sadiq Khan, who looks increasingly isolated, desperate, and historically misjudged. Senior GLA officials describe a mayoralty in name only as authority rapidly shifts to Buckingham Palace. Not since the Gordon riots of 1780 has London's governance been so fundamentally challenged. Every hour brings new defections, new revelations, and new doubts about Khan's judgment. Constitutional scholars are divided on the legal validity of Charles's actions, but even critics acknowledge the political masterstroke. As Professor Richard Webber of University College London observed, legally questionable perhaps, but politically devastating for the mayor. So here's the question that matters. Is this Charles's checkmate against Khan? Did the mayor just commit the most catastrophic political miscalculation in modern London history? Or did he accidentally trigger a constitutional revolution that will ultimately strengthen city autonomy? What do you think will happen when the High Court rules tomorrow morning? Will they side with the king or the mayor? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. And if this story shocked you as much as it shocked us, share it with everyone who needs to see what's really happening in London right now. The mainstream media won't tell you the full truth, but we will. And be sure to tune in tomorrow because our sources inside the High Court are already leaking how the judges might rule. This constitutional earthquake is just getting started, and London may never be the same again. Hit that subscribe button now because the next 24 hours could change Britain's capital forever.